It's 3:14 a.m. in a town you've never heard of, inside a motel room that smells like cheap cigarettes and failure. I'm sitting in a plastic chair that's been screaming for mercy for 20 minutes, staring at a man who until 6 hours ago was the head accountant for a mid-level drug syndicate in Jersey. Now, he's a dead man walking. Or he would be if I wasn't here to turn him into a ghost. Welcome to the United States Marshals Service WITSEC program. Most people think this job is like the movies, suits, sunglasses, and cool code names. Reality? It's mostly cold coffee, paranoia, and explaining to a grown man why he can't call his mother to say goodbye, ever. You see, my job isn't just to guard people. My job is to commit a legal murder. I have to kill who you were so that your body can keep breathing. When a witness enters the program, they don't just move, they vanish. We call it the burn. We strip you of your social security number, your birth certificate, your dental records, and that stupid high school football trophy you're still proud of. If it has your name on it, it's gone. You are now John Doe from nowhere, Nebraska, and your new hobby is being remarkably boring. The routine starts with the extraction. Usually it's a frantic call from a prosecutor or a frantic realization by the witness that their associates have figured out they're a rat. I show up with a team and we have exactly 15 minutes to pack their entire life into 2 suitcases. You'd be surprised what people try to bring. One guy tried to pack his grandmother's ashes. I had to tell him that if the cartel finds out grandma's in a suburb of Des Moines, they'll find him. Everything stays. The dog, the car, the family photos, especially the phone. You think a burner phone is safe? You're an idiot. We take the phone, we smash it, and we toss it in a river. Then comes the safe house phase. This is where the psychological cracks start to show. We're locked in a secure location for weeks, sometimes months, while the lawyers play their games. It's high-stress babysitting. I'm living with a guy who might have ordered hits on people, and now I'm the only thing standing between him and a shallow grave. He's vibrating with anxiety, I'm vibrating with a caffeine overdose, and we're both staring at the door every time a floorboard creaks. People ask me why I look like I haven't slept since the Bush administration. It's because I'm responsible for the life of someone who is actively trying to get themselves killed. Every witness thinks they're smarter than the protocol. They think just one more check on Facebook won't hurt. My job is to be the cynical voice of God telling them that every digital footprint is a laser-guided missile aimed at their forehead. We operate in the shadows, moving redacted individuals through redacted routes to redacted destinations. It's a life of constant lies, even for me. My neighbors think I sell insurance. My wife thinks I'm a high-level logistics manager for a shipping company. In a way, I am. I ship ghosts. The stress isn't just from the bad guys. It's the weight of the secret. You're holding the life of a family in your hands, and if you slip up, if you leave a paper trail, if you use a credit card at the wrong gas station, the code black happens. A compromised witness isn't a mistake, it's a catastrophe. And when the sun starts to come up and the adrenaline finally begins to wear off, leaving me with that familiar hollow-eyed psycho stare, I realize we've only made it through day 1. There are 3,000 more days to go. You want to know how you end up in this corner of hell? You don't just apply for Ghostmaker on LinkedIn. It starts with the U.S. Marshals Service. You have to be the best of the best, or at least the most resilient to chronic sleep deprivation. You go through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, FLETEC, in Glencoe, Georgia. Imagine a place where the sun hates you, the instructors hate you, and the humidity is trying to drown you on dry land. The basic training is the standard federal agent starter pack: firearms, defensive tactics, legal studies, and enough running to make you wish your legs would just fall off. But for WITSEC, that's where it gets weird. We go to the Special Operations Group training. This isn't about kicking down doors, though we do that too. This is about backstopping, That's the technical term for creating a fake life that's so convincing even the IRS believes it. We learn how to interface with every government agency you can think of. Social Security, the DMV, the Department of State. We have to learn the bureaucracy of reincarnation. How do you get a driver's license for a man who officially died in a car accident 3 weeks ago? How do you create a school record for a kid that never existed? It's a masterclass in legal forgery. We aren't just law enforcement, we're architects of reality. Then there's the psychological profile training. Most agents fail this part. You have to learn how to identify the relapse. Witnesses are like addicts. They're addicted to their old lives. We spend hours in simulations learning how to spot the signs of a witness who's about to blow their cover. We study micro-expressions, behavioral changes, and the specific tells of someone who's hiding a cell phone. We also learn counter-surveillance. This is the part that turns you into a permanent paranoiac. You spend weeks driving around cities, learning how to tell if that silver sedan has been behind you for 3 turns or 4. You learn how to clean a route. You learn how to use the dead drop and brush pass techniques that would make a Cold War spy blush. The failure rate is astronomical, not because people can't shoot straight, but because most people can't handle the moral gray zone. You're protecting the rat. Often these witnesses are worse than the people they're testifying against. You're risking your life to save a guy who sold kilos of fentanyl or laundered millions for human traffickers. The training teaches you to compartmentalize. You aren't saving a person, you're saving a piece of evidence. You're a glorified container for a testimony. I remember my final exam. I had to transport a witness through a crowded mall without being spotted by adversaries, instructors who knew exactly what I was trying to do. I spent 6 hours circling the food court, my eyes darting, my heart hammering against my ribs, sweating through my suit. By the end, I was convinced everyone from the mall Santa to the teenager selling pretzels was an assassin. That's when the instructor tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Congratulations, you're officially paranoid enough for the job." They don't tell you about the burnout. They don't tell you that after 5 years of living in safe houses and hotel rooms, you'll forget what your own home smells like. You'll start checking for tails when you're just going to buy milk. You'll start lying to your own reflection. That's the real cost of entry. You don't just join the program consumes you.
Let's talk about when it all goes to hell. The mission was supposed to be simple. Relocate Subject Delta, a former money launderer for a cartel, and his family to a red zone. That's our term for a boring, mid-sized city in the heartland where nothing ever happens. Delta had a wife and a 7-year-old daughter. They'd been in the program for 6 months, living in a suburban house with a white picket fence, pretending to be the Millers. The problem with ghosts is that they sometimes want to be seen. It was the daughter's birthday. The mother, Mrs. Miller, thought it would be harmless to send a photo to her sister. She used a public library computer, thinking the VPN would hide her. She was wrong. The cartel's digital forensics team was better than we anticipated. They didn't find the house, but they found the IP block. They knew they were in a 10-mile radius of a specific zip code in Ohio. I was at the field office when the ping came through. Our digital watchdog detected an unauthorized upload. My stomach dropped. That's the code black moment, the realization that the vacuum has been breached. I didn't even call them, I just drove. I hit the siren and pushed that SUV to its absolute limit, praying I wasn't too late. I burst into the house at 11 p.m. They were eating cake. They looked at me like I was the monster under the bed. I didn't explain. I just yelled, "Shoes on, now, leave everything else." The father knew. He saw the look in my eyes, the 48-hour no-sleep stare, and he grabbed his kid. We were 3 minutes away from the house when a black SUV with tinted windows turned onto the street. My heart was a drum kit in my chest. I didn't wait for them to make a move. I slammed the gear into reverse, screeched around the corner, and took a route I'd memorized for exactly this scenario. This is where the mission reel happens. It's not a car chase like in the movies. It's a terrifying game of hide and seek at 80 miles per hour. I'm weaving through back alleys, cutting through a construction site, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. I saw them. They were staying back, trying to keep a visual without engaging. They wanted to follow us to the next safe house. I had to burn the tail. I drove into a multi-story parking garage, switched vehicles with a pre-positioned cold car in the basement, and slipped out through a delivery entrance while the cartel guys were still searching the upper levels for a car that didn't exist anymore. We spent the next 12 hours moving through sterile locations. No hotels, no motels. We slept in the car at a rest stop, me with one eye open and a hand on my sidearm. The family was falling apart. The kid was crying for her toys. The mother was screaming at the father, and the father was just staring at the floor of the car, realizing his life was over for the second time. That's the climax they don't show you. It's not a shootout. It's the sound of a family spirit breaking in the back seat of a Ford Explorer. I finally got them to the regional airport, where a nondescript private jet was waiting. We flew them to a different time zone, to a different life, with even more redacted names. As I watched the plane take off, I stood on the tarmac, the cold wind biting through my jacket. I was shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer crushing exhaustion of it all. I saved them. They'll live to testify. They'll live to spend another 20 years being boring in a different city, but they'll never be happy, and neither will I. I drove back to my own home, or the place I call home, at 4 a.m. I sat in my driveway for 20 minutes, checking the mirrors, making sure no one followed me. My eyes were bloodshot. My hands were stained with the grease of a dozen fast food meals, and my mind was a fractured map of lies and safe houses. This is the graveyard shift. This is surviving the job that kills you every single day. People ask if it's worth it, if protecting a criminal is worth the years I've lost. I don't have an answer. I just have another file on my desk, another ghost to create, another night without sleep. Because in the world of Code Black, the only thing more dangerous than being remembered is being forgotten by the person who's supposed to keep you invisible. Stay safe out there, and for the love of God, stay off the grid.